Hello, and welcome to the 13th episode of Analyzing Fathers, the purpose of which is to take a deep dive into the life and parenting of fathers, both real and fictional, to see what, if anything, we as current and future fathers can learn from them. Today, we'll be taking a look at the parenting of Robert Freeman from the animated series, The Boondocks. Robert Jedediah Freeman, sometimes called Granddad by his peers, was a civil rights activist, military veteran, restaurant manager, father, husband, and grandfather throughout his life. Though given to various levels of embellishment about himself, we are shown that there is some truth to majority of what he says. He has at least one sister, Cookie Freeman, and a cousin named Jericho. According to stories, he is the descendant of Catcher Freeman and Tobias Lynchwater. It is unknown when Robert was born, but Werner Herzog estimates his age as somewhere between 80 to 120 years old. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Robert is confirmed to have been a pilot in World War II with the U.S. Air Force, specifically the Tuskegee Airmen. He rode with the freedom fighters during the civil rights movement, and at one time recorded a high-profile diss track when engaged in rap beef with his neighbor, the famous rapper Thugnificent. Robert is the paternal grandfather of Huey and Riley Freeman, and took them in after an unknown fate befell both their parents. Robert is not a man to forgive and forget, often holding on to things that upset him for years and years. For example, during World War II, Robert flew a P-51 Mustang. His partner, Mo, would often take credit for anything that happened, and Robert held on to that angst, finally exploding at Mo's funeral where he exposed the truth. Robert also holds a grudge against Rosa Parks. He claims she stole his thunder, as he was sitting next to her on that legendary bus in 1955, and refused his seat as well. However, the driver was only offended by Rosa's refusal, and Robert was forgotten to history. Robert's sister Cookie seems to be the only long-term positive relationship that Robert has in his life. She affectionately calls him her favorite dumbass. At some point during the civil rights movement, Robert lived in Atlanta. Once he showed up late to a march because he went home to get his raincoat, having seen water hoses being used on black people. Another time during Jim Crow law, Robert decided to use a whites-only bathroom at a bus terminal, not in protest, but because he just needed to go badly. While running from an employee after being caught, Robert accidentally ended up on a bus with the Freedom Riders, causing him to unwillingly participate in the Freedom Rides. Robert doesn't speak about his wife, son, and daughter-in-law, but they are presumed deceased. We learned that Robert had a romance with a woman named Marietta in 1980, so perhaps his wife died in 1970 or before. We see his son and daughter-in-law only once when Riley spray paints a mural on the side of their house copying a wedding picture from the family photo album. It's one of the few times Robert shows a softer side as he sheds a tear and thanks Riley before making him repaint the house. At some point in his life, Robert discovered or was taught some combat skill, primarily focused on using his belt. At a young age, Robert was shown to be skilled enough with a belt to beat up several men at once. Because of that and his experience raising his son and grandsons, Robert wields his belt like a whip, knowing when to use, how to use, and who to use it on. He can whip and restrain, as well as use it for offense and defense. He is also able to use his cane in a fight as well. When his mortal enemy Stinkmeaner becomes too much of a threat, Robert undergoes hand-to-hand combat training to the point that he can kill a man. He is also skilled with firearms and owns a shotgun and a pistol. None of this is surprising as he is a veteran, and he is from a time where protecting oneself as a black man was very important. Robert Freeman is a prideful, impatient, and oft-times intolerant man. He is old but unwise and rarely accepts responsibility for his actions or learns from his mistakes. He believes in strict discipline and won't hesitate to unleash his belt. Robert said, quote, "I hate to see a child go unbeaten." Robert is a pathological liar, referring to himself as a civil rights legend and often shamelessly including himself along important figures, when in reality, while there, Robert usually just gained animosity from his fellow black people. Robert is easily swayed by TV ads and is a major womanizer with a penchant for younger women. Throughout the series, we see Robert involved with women young enough to be his children or grandchildren. Robert isn't the best paternal influence on his grandchildren, and perhaps his own son. He teaches Huey and Riley about sneaking into the movies without paying. We are also shown that Robert can be cowardly and will abandon his friends and family to save himself. Robert is also some $2 million in debt, and according to his own words, spent his grandchildren's inheritance on their house in the suburbs of Woodcrest. This shows that he is somewhat incompetent with money and finances, but through relationships with characters like Ed Wuncler Sr. and his charisma, Robert somehow makes things happen. That being said, Robert isn't all bad at all. Robert may be embarrassed by the actions of his grandsons. However, he is shown to truly love and care for both boys. He is also very fond of his neighbor Tom Dubois' daughter Jasmine. We are never told why, but it could be due to her childlike innocence that Huey and Riley lack severely. At times, Robert treats her more like his own grandchild than the boys. That being said, Robert doesn't hesitate to push her down the stairs to save himself in a dream, and during the fried chicken flu, he did not hesitate to deny her entry into his home. Despite Robert's womanizing ways, we know Robert still loves his wife very much and misses her dearly. Perhaps her death set him on a path of womanizing, as it has for so many throughout history. He has also displayed some level of humility and maturity when he admitted that it was his fault he and his friend Mo fell apart, and when he admitted he was wrong for killing Stinkmeaner, despite Stinkmeaner being literally the worst person in the world. With his grandchildren, Robert has different relationships. While both are based in love, both boys are different and require different approaches. Huey is much more well-behaved and loves his granddad, but Huey is also quite mature for his age and can see through his grandfather's antics, making respecting Robert difficult. Huey often advises Robert against certain things only for Robert to disobey, and Huey, even though he is a child, will have to fix them. Huey is also the only person that Robert can't whip. Huey is too fast and agile on top of being generally a good kid. Huey also knows that he can trust and confide in his grandfather. One of my favorite moments from the series finds Huey exhausted and worn out from life sitting at a kitchen table. He asks his grandfather, quote, "What do you do when you can't do nothing, but there's nothing you can do?" To which Granddad lovingly replies simply, "You do what you can." And that was what Huey needed to hear at that time. When it comes to Riley, Robert treats him much more harshly because of the way Riley disobeys and gets into trouble. Riley is heavily influenced by TV, similar to how Robert is, and as such is obsessed with the gangster lifestyle his favorite rappers, Gangstalicious and Thugnificent, portray. Riley's blatant disrespect for his grandfather's rules often results in some portion of their home being destroyed. Riley is rambunctious, as well as often starting fights with Huey that get out of control and destroy something. As a result, Riley is often on the receiving end of physical punishment more than Huey. However, Riley is already used to it, and so it doesn't change his attitudes or actions towards his grandfather. Because of that, Huey and Riley are treated differently, and Riley knows it. Despite this, Riley listens to his grandfather more than Huey does, whereas Huey has a hard time respecting Robert due to his actions. Riley does not, because by his own standards, his granddad is, quote, doing it big. He has a big house, he lives near wealthy, affluent people and celebrities, he drives a nice car, he usually has a beautiful woman around, and he is willing to throw down with anyone, even Riley, to prove his point. All of these are ideals promoted to Riley through music and entertainment. Robert and Riley are also very much alike when it comes to wanting things, getting money, and being manipulative. Perhaps it is these things mentioned that makes Robert put extra pressure on Riley. Perhaps he sees himself in Riley. Robert may have been a troublemaker like his youngest grandson, and his older sister was the responsible one, like his eldest grandson, Huey. This is, of course, conjecture on my part. So what can we, as current and future fathers, learn from Robert Freeman? Stepping up. Despite the numerous negative things said about Robert, his biggest and brightest good point is that he stepped up and took his grandchildren in. He legitimately loved them and was trying his best to raise them right. He used his grandchildren's inheritance, but he used it to move them into a supposed safer neighborhood with more opportunities for them. Things didn't work out completely as planned, but what Robert did was done out of true love and concern. He was preparing them to be good men in a crazy world. We as fathers should strive for the same. Teach them, discipline them, but also show them love, affection, and how to deal with emotions. Robert was doing just that. Adaptability. When it comes to Riley, it was clear that physical punishment accomplished nothing. Some kids are like that. Robert did not adapt and find new ways to communicate or punish Riley, and so it was a never-ending cycle that bordered on abuse. We as fathers in the real world don't have the same luxury as Robert, and adaptability is key. If what you're doing isn't getting the desired results, try something new. Don't be embarrassed, and talking to your kids about why it doesn't work can get surprising results. They are aware, and they will tell if asked. There's always a road to where we want to get. We just have to find it. Robert Freeman was many things, but above all, he was a father. He raised his child to adulthood and then stepped up to raise his grandchildren. 2 generations of men being brought up under his wing. His son grew into a good man who married and had children, and from what we see, despite their behavior, Huey and Riley will likely grow into good men as well. Despite the ups and downs, Robert Freeman succeeded as a father. Thank you for watching this episode of Analyzing Fathers. Please like and subscribe, and comment below any fathers you'd like to see analyzed in future episodes, both real and fictional. In the next episode, we'll be taking a look at the parenting of Tom Dubois from the animated series, The Boondocks.